Hey, 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 I see you're back to Math Quest. Not a problem. And today I'm going to show you how to solve two-step equations with fractions and variables, right? So let's just get to it, all right? There's so many tips and tricks that I can show you here. And you know me, I'm going to show you some. So let's grab a pencil here. Oh, and make sure you're ready to take notes. You know, that's the way you learn best. Let me pick this one right here. I wrote some down here. These are the common ones that you'll see. So make sure you're writing this down. Because as much as you enjoy just watching me solve problems, you're going to learn a lot more if you're actually doing it with me. All right. So here we have 10 minus 2/3 x equals 52. Rule number one. Always look at the constant first, right? The one that does not have a variable. So I know this doesn't have a variable, this doesn't have a variable. So those are the two numbers that I'm going to combine together. The question is, do I take the 52 over here with the 10, or do I take the 10 over here with the 52? Listen carefully. The ultimate goal when we solve for x is that we want x by itself. So we want everything away from x, right? So I'm going to take this 10 over here and combine it with the 52. The question is, how do I do it? Well, I notice that it's a plus 10, so I'm going to do the opposite. Since it's a positive 10, I'm going to do minus 10 because I want to create a 0. This becomes a 0 here. And just like algebra, whatever do we do to one side, we have to do the same thing to the other. Since I did minus 10 here, I'm going to do minus 10 here. This is my first step. So again, this becomes a 0, leaving negative 2/3 x behind equals, and then here we have just 52 minus 10, which would be 42. All right. Now we have one fraction left. This is the coefficient. The one with the variable is always called the coefficient. So if you watch my video on one-step equations, this is all this is now. It's a one-step equation now. So we're going to take the reciprocal, right, with the inverse. We're going to take 2/3, and notice it's negative 2/3. We're going to flip it over, 3/2. Multiply that side by it, and with whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So 3/2 here. You should know by now that this all simplifies to 1 because 2 divided by 2 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so all of it is just 1x. The question I get a lot here is, well, Mr. Medina, is this a positive or negative x? It's going to be a positive x because if you notice, I multiplied a negative 2/3 times a negative 3/2. Negative times a negative equals a positive. So therefore, right here, all we have to do is simplify this. Again, if this confuses you, you can just write it, the 40, the whole number over a 1, so you can see it's just a fraction. And when we multiply fractions, we just multiply straight across. Straight across, that's all we do. But I want to simplify in here so I don't end up with large numbers. So I notice I have a 42 here and I have a 2. So what I'm going to do is divide these two numbers. 42 divided by 2. This is going to give me a 1 here, and this is going to give me a 21. Now simply I have 21 times 3 going straight across. Well, 21 times 3 is going to be 63. On the bottom, I just have 1 times 1, which just equals 1. So therefore, my final answer here, let's not forget about the negative symbol here, okay? So this final answer is negative because this was a positive. So it's negative 63 as a final answer. All right? Hopefully that made sense to you. Listen, if you got lost in any one of these steps, remember, as I'm teaching you, you can pause it, write down the notes, play it again, go back to the beginning, watch what I did, and make sure you don't miss those important steps, those reasons on why I told you why we are doing something. The sooner you learn those reasons, the faster you'll be able to understand all of this and be able to solve all of them. All right, so let's take a look at another one here. This one just looks a little different, same process. So let's go 25 equals 1/4 n minus 3. Okay, So if you notice, all they did was take this entire thing that used to be on this side and put that number by itself on this side, right? So I got here the coefficient and a constant, and right here I got the constant. Again, do not just follow a pattern and try to move the 25 over here. You got to ask yourself, what is it going to take me to get everything away from the n? Well, it's going to take me creating a 0 right here and then multiplying everything by 4 over 1. So let's get started here. So plus 3, remember, I want to create a 0. So if I have negative 3, I want to add 3 to it, so it creates a 0. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So this is our first step here. So this is 0. This here is 25 plus 3, which is 28, equals 1/4 n. Okay, that's what I have left. So again, this is just a one-step equation what we have left here. So let's get to it here. Oops, sorry. So let's multiply everything by the inverse, which is 4 over 1. And here, 4 over 1. Remember, if this looks confusing to you, you can always put a 1 there, but you don't have to. All right, so here, you should know on this side, everything's going to simplify, giving you the n by itself. And here, everything on the bottom just equals 1. So then all I have is 28 times 4, which you'll probably need a calculator. So let's do 4 times 3 is 120. 120 minus 4 would be 116. I think that's right, right? But let me check correctly. Let's see. 4 times 20 is 80. And then plus 32 is... Oh, that gave me a different number. Okay, let me just get a calculator. 28 times 4. It did give me 112. Okay, so I was right the second time. All right. So 112, not 116. So n equals 112 is your final answer. Hopefully you're following the process. The reason we do opposites, notice it's a minus 3, I do plus 3, is because I want to create a 0 on one of the sides. Then I just duplicate the same thing on the other side. I did plus 3 here, so I do plus 3 here. And then from there I continue flipping over the fraction, multiplying both sides by it, getting my final answer. All right? Hopefully it's making sense now. All right. Now, let's take a look at one that's a little different, but most teachers never take the time to explain this. I don't know why. Probably because they're not as good as me. Just kidding. But no, I'm not. All right, so n over negative 3 minus 2 equals negative 18. Often students will get this and say, okay, wow, this looks completely different. I don't know. What do I do here? Don't panic. Relax. It's the same thing. So the first thing, remember, I want to get everything away from my coefficient. This is where my variable is, so I'm gonna get rid of that last. So I need to get rid of the 2 first. So let's start with that, and we'll do plus 2 on both sides. This is colorful. All right, so that creates my 0 here. Remember, I always want to create a 0 on one side. That's gonna give me here n over negative 3 equals, and this is just negative 18 plus 2. That creates a subtraction problem, giving me negative 16. All right, so what do we do here? I'm going to write it off to the side here. I want you to understand that this right here, which is n over negative 3, is the same as 1 over negative 3 times n, right? It's the same exact thing. So that means it's the same exact thing as this right here and as the previous problem right here. Okay? Same exact thing. It just looks different. So don't get thrown off by it. And feel free to write it like this every time until you get comfortable just seeing it like that, because you're going to continue to see it, especially the higher you go in math levels. All right. So now that we know that this is simply negative 1/3 times n, well, all I'm going to do is flip it, right? And if I flip it, it will be negative 3 over 1. So I do the opposite side, negative 3 over 1. Again, here, you know it's just going to equal an n, 1n, Oh, in case you're wondering, why is that a 1? Why do we put a 1 there? Because there's always a 1 here. We just don't write it. There's always a 1 next to the n when it's by itself. We just don't write it in there. All right, back to this. So this equals 1n equals, and then here there's nothing to simplify, right? So 16 times 3 is what it's going to be. So that's going to be 30 plus 18, that's 48, I believe. And now notice I have a negative 16 and a negative 3, so it's going to give me a positive 48. All right, that is there, my final answer. All right, I hope you're getting the hang of this. Now, I thought about this. Should I give you this other problem? And I am, all right, because this other one has multiple fractions, and, you know, people get thrown off by fractions. I don't understand why. So let me write this out. 2/3 minus half n equals 5/6. All right, so this is what we have. The question is, okay, this is a subtraction problem, which is going to cause me to add on this side. But in order for me to add or subtract fractions, I need common denominators. It's going to create a royal mess. So what I'm going to teach you is fraction busting, right? How do we get rid of the fractions? And if you haven't watched my video on fraction busting, I highly recommend it. You'll never have to deal with fractions again. What you want to look at is the least common multiple, right? Which one can the 3, the 2, and the 6 all divide into evenly? Luckily for me, if I choose a 3, I cannot divide the 2 into it evenly, and I cannot divide the 6 into it. But the 6, the 2 can go into it evenly, the 3 can go into it evenly, and 6 itself can go into itself evenly. So that's the number. That's how you choose which number you're going to multiply everything by. So in this case, I'm going to multiply everything by 6. 6 here and 6 here. Okay? Everything. Even if I had a whole number here somewhere, everything gets multiplied by 6. Now, the first thing I want you to do, because it's going to make it easier. Now, it doesn't matter if you multiply first and then divide, but I like to divide first. So I'm going to divide by the denominator every single time. Make a note of that in your notebook. Always divide by the denominator first. What's left over is going to get multiplied by the numerator. Okay? Go ahead and pause it and play back again when you're ready after you write it down. So let's get started here. 6 divided by 3 right here. 6 divided by 3. This is going to give me a 2. That 6 is no longer a 6. Now it's a 2. Then I do 2 times 2. That's going to give me 4. Notice, I got rid of the fraction. That's why it's called fraction busting. Then I do minus, again, 6 divided by 2. Well, 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. That's my new number now. And now I do 3 times 1n is going to be 3n. Equals, bring down your equal sign. And then here again, 6 divided by 6 is 1. Then 1 times 5 simply gives me 5. Right? Notice, I no longer have fractions. Now I just have a simple two-step equation with whole numbers. Let's get to it. So, right here, let's pick orange here. Minus 4. Right? Because I want to create a 0 on this side, and minus 4 here. Because I want to get everything away and get the n by itself. Now I have left over negative 3n equals, this is just a simple subtraction problem that equals 1. Then what's left here? I divide, this is, pay attention that this is being multiplied, negative 3 times n. So I do the opposite. I always do the opposite and divide everything by negative 3. Okay? So here, that becomes a 1. Don't think that that becomes a 0. That here becomes a 1. 1n. Notice it's a positive n because I divided negative by a negative, give me a positive n. On this side, this. Don't be so eager to put this in your calculator. That is very much acceptable as your final answer. Negative 1/3. That will be your final answer. Your calculator is just going to give you a repeating decimal. So you don't want that. So I hope you got value out of this video. Like always, if you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. All right? And I'll see you next time on Math Quest. Have a good day. Bye-bye.